VFACTS. It's short for Vehicle Facts. It all deals with the sales figures of motor vehicles. Comes out about once a month. And I'll tell you right now, the numbers are not pretty. Car sales numbers are plummeting. In fact, they're rock bottom. And they say the numbers indicate, quite understandably, that people are concerned about spending, which in turn means they will be unwilling to spend money on other things, such as upgrading or extending their homes. We have governments focused on stimulating the large-scale building industry, but it's said they're missing the mainstay of the construction sector, that being small-scale builders and tradies that spend money every day in corner stores and small businesses in neighbourhoods in cities and regional centres across the country. And this, it's argued, is the direction in which governments need to focus. We're joined by Steve Chandler. He's a property development expert. Steve, welcome to Perth tonight. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
What exactly is going on here? We've somehow managed to link falling car sales with the problem with the smaller scale building industry. Is this because we're talking about similar amounts of money? The reason why I ask the question is because, generally speaking, I would have thought the decision to buy a new car is a separate and a different kind of decision to a decision to, say, do some renovations to the house.
Yeah, look, you look at most of the sort of the car sales values, the average car values, etc. And if you're talking about sort of a $50,000 vehicle, there's two ways people can look at that. They can either finance it or pay cash for it. Generally speaking, in my experience, people sort of take that 50 grand out of their mortgage and then go and buy a car, and that's cheaper than getting an unsecured loan from a finance company. But when you take that 50 grand out of your mortgage and spend it on a car, if you're not really willing to do that, then you're probably not willing to do it on putting an extension out the back or a second story on your home. Or
now,
even,
this is where I say, is that the case? If you buy a car, let's take your $50,000 car, you say, yeah, it'd be nice to have a new car, and you can understand the joys of buying a new car. If you say, I'm going to put an extension on the back, that's different. The reason being, you psychologically know the $50,000 car over time is going to depreciate in value. If you put the extensions on the back of the house, you psychologically know that what you're doing is potentially adding value to the house. If not tomorrow, certainly in the longer term. So isn't the decision to take 50 grand to buy a new car and then 50 grand to do some renovations, isn't the second decision a completely different decision to the first?
Oh, I've got a yes and a no for you on that one, Chris. Yes, I agree with you that a car is not an asset. It's depreciating. It's losing value from the moment you drive it out the showroom. A renovation, an extension, theoretically should be adding value to a home. It could simply be maintenance as well. So there's a possibility there.
Yeah, but if you don't do the maintenance, the house is going to lose value anyway, isn't it?
Oh, not necessarily. Not necessarily. You've got demand for a property. If you're close to the city or close to a railway station, if government rezones your land, there's always the chance that your property will increase in value. And there's also that scenario of renovator's delight, where people will overpay for a dilapidated home. So but generally, what you're saying, yeah, I agree with you. Most people would view it as in a completely different way. The thing I think we've got happening at the moment, due to what's happening with COVID-19, is that people aren't willing to spend because they have uncertainty, a lack of confidence in what's going to happen. With JobKeeper, it'll end later this year. With Job Seeker being a different sort of program, there's concern that I'm getting through the people that I talk to that people just aren't willing to sort of say, I'm going to spend some money on a renovation at the moment, where I don't know if I'm going to have a job, or if I have got a job, if I'm going to be cut back to 4 days a week or 80% of my pay, or what exactly is going to happen. We're in completely uncharted water here, where never have we had a slowdown in the economy that's been forced on us by government trying to control a virus. We've had the GFC, 10 odd years ago.
Yeah, that was financial. That's a different thing. And I understand what you're saying, because we are dealing with very much unknown factors. At least when we have a financial crisis, the cause of the financial crisis is always understood. There can be speculation as the best way to deal with it, but certainly it's a known quantity and people do what they believe to be best. I'm also wondering, though, and I get the whole bit about stimulation, and it makes sense. Right now, the government does not need to tie the purse strings. It needs to loosen the purse strings. It needs to encourage people to spend. But we don't think of a collective, and what we're talking about here, spending is good for the collective nation right now. It's good for businesses right now if we spend. The problem is the average person doesn't think as a collective, they think as an individual. So if you feel that money is liable to be tight, if you're not going to have as much money coming in as you once did, naturally you're going to try and hold on to what you've got. So even if people receive some sort of money or some sort of concession to spend in the way that you're suggesting they should, how would you go about guaranteeing that they wouldn't look at this and say, okay, we've got some more money. You beauty, we think things are going to be tight, so we've got some more money we can stash away for a rainy day.
It's a really tough sort of ask. What we've got is just that whole uncertainty scenario that sits around what we're looking at here. Even for government don't really know what to do. They know they've got to stimulate. They know that the easiest way to do it is at the big end of the spectrum, which is the large scale building type projects. They're doing rapid approvals of major projects where they can get what they view as a large amount of projects up and running. But what really needs to happen is somehow we've got to get the people at at that home renovation sort of side of things and the new home builders. We've got to get that market moving. We've got currently there's some calls for like a $50,000 flat rate, first home buyers or new home buyers scheme to come on board. Then you've got.
But how do you stop stuff like that? You talk about a $50,000 new home buyers grant. In my experience, and look, you may well put me on the cynical side of the ledger, and I'll accept that if that's the case. But when you see grants like that, as far as I can see, all they do is drive the price of whatever people are purchasing up by a commensurate amount. If something's worth $300,000 and suddenly there's a $50,000 new home buyers grant, it instantly and almost suddenly overnight becomes $350,000, which means the money doesn't really go anywhere. So how do you make the money effective without simply making the market gobble it up?
I think the $50,000 first home buyer grant that they're talking about, I believe it will push prices up. So I don't think that's actually the right way to go about it. I mean, historically, over the last sort of 25 years or so, whenever they have come out with a first home buyers grant, it's always resulted in an increase in prices. So historically, we've seen that it doesn't work, but it does stimulate. And I suppose maybe now the government might be thinking, this is potentially a way of doing it, of getting some stimulation, even though it's going to drive property prices back up.
But that's not helpful. If people see, this is what I get, and this is a problem I have getting my head around this, Steve. I get that we want to stimulate. I absolutely get that. I get that we need people to spend. Once again, understood. The thing I don't get, if we drive prices up and people are already nervous anyway, and any stimulation is negated by price increases, then people are back to square one. And they're not idiots. They're going to respond accordingly. So I really get back to this other question. How are we going to achieve this without pricing ourselves out of the market, because all we do is gobble it up with an increase?
Now, I think government has to do it in a small and measured way. It comes down to this confidence scenario. I mean, if I'm a person who's living in a earning an average wage in an average home in an average suburb, and I drive an average car, and I'm not certain whether or not I'm going to have a job next week or next month. That's the killer of the economy, because that person will not spend any money that they don't have to, because they'll need to provide for the future. So giving someone confidence that they're going to be employed or they're going to have an income is critical. And this is where the government did a great job with JobKeeper. So being able to ensure that there was an income coming in for a period of time. And somehow the government, without, they've got this error that they found in their JobKeeper numbers. Maybe the answer is to extend the length of JobKeeper, maybe at a lower amount of money, but extend JobKeeper into the future to just keep that confidence while business, at a consumer level, while business picks up and starts getting back to what we knew as normal.
So what you're talking about is maintaining JobKeeper, so business has a chance to open up. People have enough money to be able to go out and spend, and so business can hopefully recover, and we start to back JobKeeper off around about the same time that businesses are recovering. By extension, jobs are more secure and people also feel more confident.
Absolutely. Without business being out there and investing and buying product just for itself to keep going, regardless of whether it's making a large profit or a small profit, it's just to be able to keep the doors, the doors open and keep things moving. Most businesses would be really happy to just be able to turn over and sort of say, hey, yeah, this is okay, we're going to recover. So at the moment, you've got a number of people that I speak to in my industry. It's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Prices are starting to come down according to some forecasts, and some numbers are being reported as being, hey, we're actually pretty robust, although it's on small quantities of transactions. So we've got there's so many different opinions about what's going to happen in the economy that is in itself, it is crushing confidence. So I'm fairly open-minded to what we can do, and I believe we'll be able to come out of this fairly quickly. The question, though, is at that bottom end, the tradies who are out there helping the small-scale mum and dad businesses at that bottom end of the market, that's where we really need to see the government get some support in. I'm not sure how they're actually going to do it, because it's such a, when you stimulate the larger projects, that stimulates a substantial component of the industry, but it doesn't get down to the people who are really running those really micro businesses that employ one or two people but keep a number of trades and other subcontractors going, and suppliers and the local hardware stores and the local shop where they go and grab their smokos. They're the people that we really need to support, because the bigger companies where they've got the large construction companies where their staff get paid huge amounts of money every year because they've got these enterprise agreements and things with the unions, etc. They're all going to be fine.
Yeah, that's a completely different scenario, isn't it? Steve, we're out of time, so thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Steve Chandler's a property development expert. What would stimulate you? Could you imagine a scenario whereby you might have extra money to spend on something? At the moment, would you feel inclined to spend on, let's say, for example, some housing renovations that by extension support tradies, who by extension support other small businesses? Or would you be more inclined to sit on the money? It's an open-ended question, and it really comes down to what are people prepared to do? In short, we don't have the answers. We know what we would like the answers to be, but we don't necessarily have them.